I was scrolling through my feed one Saturday morning, sipping the bitter remains of my third coffee, when her post stopped me cold. My fiancé, my fiancé had written something that made my stomach tighten and my hands tremble slightly, though I tried to keep it subtle. Making him take a polygraph test before the wedding. If he loves me, he has nothing to hide, she had typed, the words dripping with self-righteous certainty, like a dagger twisting where it didn't belong. I blinked. I had read it twice. Then I laughed. Not out loud, no. My laugh was tight, controlled, venomous in its disbelief. I typed a comment beneath her post, my fingers barely shaking. Great idea, you first. And then I paused. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like it knew what was coming next. I had always known she was controlling, but this was a new level. The challenge was issued, and I didn't plan to dodge it. If she wanted truth, real truth, I would give it to her. But I would give it on my terms. Scheduling the polygraph was easier than I imagined. I found a reputable examiner, someone professional, detached, a person who treated the machine, the questions, the entire process like a science experiment rather than a circus show. I booked 2 sessions, one for me, one for her, and sent her the appointment confirmations without preamble. No explanations, no justifications, just the times, dates, and locations. I wanted her to feel the anticipation the way I did, the thrill and the terror of actually being tested, of having your truth laid bare. The day arrived. I watched her leave her apartment, perfectly dressed as though she were attending some grand gala rather than a polygraph test. She waved at me from the doorway with a casualness she didn't feel. I could see it in her eyes. I could always see it. The arrogance, the carefully curated confidence. It was there even as the fear of the unknown tugged at the corners of her smile. The examiner's office smelled like antiseptic and old wood, sterile but oddly comforting. I had been here before, years ago in a different context for a job screening. The machine hummed quietly in the corner, wires and sensors coiled like snakes, ready to wrap around whatever truth it sought. I sat down and felt the pulse in my throat, the faint tremor in my hands, and for a moment I understood why people lied to themselves before they lied to others. She arrived shortly after, her heels clicking on the tile floor, every step measured, every movement calculated. I watched as she settled into the chair, the examiner introducing her to the equipment, clipping sensors to her fingers, her chest, her arms. Her eyes flicked toward me once, maybe twice, searching for reassurance or an ally in the room. She found neither. I gave her a small nod, polite, almost imperceptible. I wasn't here to comfort her. I was here to see everything. The test began. I had submitted my questions beforehand, carefully chosen to probe her fidelity, her honesty, her true intentions toward me. Each question was surgical, designed to expose the gaps between her words and her truth. The examiner's voice was calm, methodical, almost hypnotic. Have you ever been unfaithful to your fiancé? He asked, voice neutral, professional. She shifted slightly in the chair, a subtle motion, but I noticed. The censors would notice too, and the examiner's trained eyes would read the results like an open book. Her first answers were smooth, almost rehearsed. She smiled as she denied everything, as though the words themselves were armor. But subtle tells betrayed her, micro-expressions, tiny hesitations, an almost imperceptible tightening around her mouth. I could see them. The examiner could see them, and soon the machine would see them too. I was next. I watched her, heart pounding, as the examiner finished calibrating, the last sensors clipped in place. I wondered if she realized that the questions I had sent weren't just probing her fidelity in the past. They were digging into the intentions she tried to hide, the small betrayals, the selfish impulses she never admitted, not even to herself. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and felt a strange thrill. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was truth in its rawest, most unflinching form. She answered another round of questions. Her voice was steady, too steady. I could feel the tension radiating off her, see it in the subtle shifts of her shoulders, the way her eyes darted to the examiner and then back to the ceiling, as if looking for guidance or forgiveness from some invisible authority. She didn't know I was recording every detail in my memory, every twitch, every subtle lie she didn't even know she was telling. I thought about our relationship in that office, sitting on opposite sides of a barrier made of science, protocol, and undeniable truth. The past few months had been a maze of half-truths, little white lies, and convenient omissions. I had ignored many of them, convinced myself that love required tolerance, that trust was a leap into the void. But here now, all of it, the doubts, the suspicions, the quiet frustrations, was about to be validated or obliterated by pure, unarguable fact. The examiner paused for a moment, adjusting the machine, making notes, and I caught the faintest flicker in her eyes. Fear, not panic, but a slow, creeping realization that this wasn't about her controlling me anymore. This was about her being confronted with herself, and it was beautiful, in a terrible way. I didn't want her to suffer. I wanted her to see herself clearly, unfiltered, unprotected. I glanced at the clock. The minutes dragged, each one stretching longer than the last. I could hear her breathing, soft, controlled, a rhythm she thought she owned. I remembered the night we had first talked about marriage, the promises she had made, the vows whispered between champagne glasses and dimmed lights. Did she remember them now? Could she reconcile the woman in that memory with the one sitting across from me, wires clipped to her body, confronted with questions that cut deeper than any argument we'd ever had? The examiner moved on to another round of questions, ones more pointed, more personal, more dangerous. Have you ever lied about your feelings toward him? He asked, each word measured. She blinked, a small, almost imperceptible hesitation that told me more than any explanation could. I leaned forward slightly, the chair squeaking, feeling a rush of adrenaline. This was it. The moment where everything we pretended didn't exist would be revealed. And then, just as subtly as it began, the first truth emerged. I could see it in her eyes, a flash, a tremor, a break in the armor she had so meticulously built. I didn't need the machine to tell me yet. I saw it. The first betrayal, the first lie, the first moment where her version of fidelity didn't match reality. The examiner scribbled notes, nodding occasionally, but his eyes never left the sensors, never left her. She was trying to maintain composure, but the tension in her hands, the slight rise and fall of her chest, the flush creeping up her neck, these were all betrayals the machine would confirm, and I felt a mixture of triumph and relief. I had suspected this, wondered, feared, and now the first evidence was undeniable. I thought about how she would react when she discovered that I had done the same test she demanded of me. How would she feel when the questions she had sent me, questions about my honesty, my fidelity, my intentions, were answered with cold, unflinching truth? I allowed myself a small, private smile. I had played her game, on her terms, and now I held the cards she never expected me to. I stood outside the examiner's office during her final round of questioning, pacing the hallway, my thoughts racing faster than my footsteps. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about clarity, about honesty, about confronting the illusions we build around love and trust. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, a gravity that made every breath deliberate, every step measured. Finally, the examiner opened the door. Her session was over. She stepped out, mask firmly in place, but I saw it, just a flicker, a hesitation, a momentary crack in her confidence. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was already there, lingering in the air between us, heavier than words, more potent than any argument or confession. I had my turn next. Sitting in the chair, the sensors cold against my skin, I felt the machine hum to life. I thought of her post, of her certainty, and I smiled, a quiet, private smile. It was my time. I would answer the questions, every single one, because my truth was simple, unshakable, and unafraid. The chair felt colder this time, heavier, as if it knew the weight of the truth I was about to bear. The sensors clung to me like silent witnesses, pressing against my skin, recording every involuntary twitch, every heartbeat that betrayed my anticipation. I stared at the ceiling, breathing slowly, deliberately, feeling the hum of the machine beneath me, the faint click of buttons and switches in the examiner's hands. This was the moment I had prepared for, the apex of the challenge she had thrown down. I was calm, collected, unafraid. Unlike her, I had no armor to break. My truth was simple, unshakable, and unwavering. The examiner began with the questions I had submitted, carefully curated, pointed, designed to test honesty, integrity, fidelity. "Have you ever lied to your fiancé about your past relationships?" he asked, voice neutral, clinical. I answered, each word steady, measured, unflinching. There was no hesitation, no flicker of doubt. My body remained still, my breathing even, my heartbeat steady. I could feel the sensors recording every physiological response, translating them into a language I didn't need to read, the language of truth. As I continued, I glanced briefly toward the door, imagining her sitting outside, waiting, wondering, terrified of what she didn't yet know. I imagined the moments when she would see the results, when the veneer she wore so meticulously would shatter under the weight of undeniable facts. The thought was intoxicating, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I craved clarity, the kind that no argument, no social media post, no carefully crafted lie could ever deliver. When my session ended, I stepped out of the chair, feeling lighter, freer. The questions had been answered. The truth had been given. I walked down the hallway, past the sterile walls and humming machines, toward the room where she waited, the place where our illusions were about to collide with reality. She looked up as I entered, her posture tense, controlled, but I saw it, just a flicker of recognition, a momentary crack in the mask. Her eyes searched mine for reassurance, for some signal that what she feared wasn't true. I offered none. I couldn't. I wasn't here to console her. I was here to confront her with what she had demanded, what she had instigated. The examiner began reviewing her results first. I watched her face carefully, every micro-expression, every subtle twitch that betrayed the inner storm she tried to hide. The machine had done its job, and the evidence was clear. Her responses were inconsistent, subtle but unmistakable deviations from truth that no amount of charm, preparation, or bravado could conceal. She hadn't anticipated this. She hadn't expected the machine, the science, the unflinching truth, to expose what even she refused to admit to herself. I could see the realization dawning, slowly, painfully, like sunlight creeping over jagged cliffs. Her hands fidgeted, her eyes flicked to the examiner and back to me, searching for some invisible lifeline. The questions I had submitted had pierced her carefully constructed facade. The truth about her fidelity, her intentions, her small betrayals, lay bare before us both. I didn't need the examiner to explain it. I could see it in her eyes, in the faint tremor of her lips, in the subtle quiver of her voice when she tried to protest, when she tried to deny what the evidence screamed. Then it was my turn to review the results. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. My answers were consistent, unwavering, without a single deviation from honesty. The machine confirmed what I already knew. My truth was intact, unbroken, undeniable. I felt a quiet satisfaction, a private triumph that wasn't born from malice, but from clarity. I had played her game, on her terms, and I had emerged unscathed, untarnished, unafraid. The room fell into a tense silence. She avoided my gaze, but I could feel her eyes on me, burning with a mixture of fear, frustration, and the dawning comprehension of what she had asked for, what she had provoked. I let the silence stretch, let it become a mirror reflecting her own expectations back at her. She had demanded truth, and now she had it, in its rawest, most unflinching form. "Do you understand the results?" the examiner asked, voice calm, professional. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't answer immediately. She swallowed, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edges of the chair. Finally, she nodded, small, almost imperceptible, but it was an acknowledgement. She had seen it, she had felt it, and there was nothing left to deny. I stepped closer, my presence deliberate, controlled, a silent assertion of the truth I carried with me. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse, I didn't beg. I simply let the weight of the evidence speak louder than any argument ever could. I had anticipated confrontation, perhaps even rage, tears, anger. But what I saw instead was something subtler, a dawning, reluctant understanding that she could not control me, that she could not bend reality to her desires, that the truth could not be negotiated, coerced, or manipulated. Her voice came quiet, hesitant. I, I didn't expect, she trailed off, unable to find the words to capture the enormity of what had just occurred. I let her struggle with it, let her feel the consequences of her own demands, the implications of her insistence that love could be measured, quantified, interrogated, tested. I spoke then, softly, deliberately, letting each word carry the weight of clarity. You wanted truth. You asked for it. Now you have it. Not because I sought to humiliate you, not because I wanted to punish you, but because the truth doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It exists, whether we like it or not. She looked down, a faint flush rising in her cheeks, a mixture of shame and realization. I could see her mind working, spinning through the memories, the choices, the lies, the omissions, trying to reconcile the woman she thought she was with the woman the machine had exposed. We left the examiner's office in silence. The air outside felt different, heavier, charged with the residue of unspoken truths. The world hadn't changed, but we had. The dynamic, the illusions, the careful narrative we had built around us. Everything had shifted irreversibly. I felt no triumph, no victory in a traditional sense. What I felt was clarity, precision, the kind of understanding that only comes when pretense is stripped away, when masks fall and only truth remains. We didn't speak much that day, not in the car, not at home. Words felt inadequate, insufficient, trivial in the face of what had transpired. I could see her wrestling with herself, the weight of her actions pressing down on her, a gravity she had invited unknowingly, unwillingly, but deservedly. I focused on my own thoughts, reflecting on the choices we had made, the realities we had ignored, the truths we had evaded. Days passed, conversations resumed, but they were different now, measured, careful, tinged with an awareness that neither of us could escape. She no longer posted about tests or demands for proof on social media. The arrogance, the certainty, the self-righteousness had dimmed, replaced by introspection, an acknowledgement that truth cannot be forced, only faced. And I learned something too. I learned that love, real love, isn't about control. It isn't about testing, proving, interrogating. It isn't about who has the upper hand or who can manipulate perception. Love is fragile, yes, but it is strengthened by honesty, unflinching honesty, by the courage to confront the truth without fear, without resentment, without expectation. The polygraph had done its job, not just as a machine measuring physiological responses, but as a mirror reflecting who we were, who we pretended to be, and who we could choose to become. I saw her clearly, and I saw myself. And in that clarity, there was no malice, no revenge, no celebration. There was only truth. And the quiet, unshakable knowledge that it was unbreakable, unavoidable, undeniable. In the end, we were left with choices, and truth always demands a choice. And sometimes the hardest part isn't confronting the lies of others, it's confronting the lies we tell ourselves.